Today, we're doing a deep dive into just one year, 1927. And this isn't just some random point in history. It's really the brilliant, contradictory peak of the Roaring Twenties.
It's the ultimate crucible year. It really is.
Yeah.
We tend to look back on the 20s with this, romantic haze of jazz and easy money. But 1927 is the moment where the triumphs and the existential crises just slam into each other.
Exactly. So our mission here is to get you right to the heart of that. We've pulled together some sources that show this stunning juxtaposition of highs and lows, and we're going to frame it all around this central idea for 1927, the roar and the echo.
And just to set the stage, think about the two defining images of that year. First, you've got the roar.
Right.
That's a crazy, chaotic ticker tape parade for Charles Lindbergh down Fifth Avenue in June, a man who just, seemingly conquered distance itself.
And then you have the echo, that quiet, devastating image of a lone farmhouse just submerged in brown floodwater. It's a photo from the Great Mississippi Flood of 1927.
At the time, the single greatest national disaster the U.S. had ever faced.
So that tension between this technological euphoria and this fundamental natural crisis, that's what we're digging into.
We've broken it down into three major dualities: progress and peril, unity and division, and then finally, prosperity and precipice.
Okay, so let's jump in with that first one, progress and peril. You have the machine just annihilating distance, and then nature strikes back with, just brutal force.
The technological leap that year was truly staggering. Of course, the iconic moment is Lindbergh's solo flight.
New York to Paris, nonstop.
In May, yeah. And that trip in the spirit of St. Louis, it instantly makes him, as one of our sources perfectly puts it, a global technocratic idol. It was this symbol of American can-do possibility.
And the technology to share that news was being built at the exact same time. So Lindbergh lands in Paris on May 21st, and just days later, on the 23rd, you have engineers in New York giving the first live demonstration of television.
Right. And the network to get all this content out there gets formalized that year, too. In September, the Columbia Phonographic Broadcasting System, which, is a mouthful,
Becomes CBS.
becomes CBS, yeah. It goes on air with 47 stations.
Yeah.
You suddenly have this commercial national connectivity. That's the roar of progress, loud and clear.
But while New York is cheering for Lindbergh and putting up radio towers, this devastating echo is unfolding in the heartland.
The Great Mississippi Flood. And this wasn't just a storm. This was colossal.
The numbers are insane. It flooded 27,000 square miles.
That's an area the size of New England.
The entirety of New England, and it affected 700,000 people.
And what really shocked Washington was the economic fallout. The total losses were estimated at $1 billion. Now, to put that in perspective for you, that was almost 1/3 of the entire federal budget at the time.
So local governments are just completely swamped, pun intended.
Utterly overwhelmed.
So this catastrophe becomes the thing that forces the federal government to expand. I have to imagine there was huge resistance to that kind of centralization. How did Herbert Hoover, the Secretary of Commerce, actually get the federal government to take over?
It was pure necessity. Hoover's genius was in deploying this national technocratic response. He wasn't relying on local efforts. He was coordinating the rescue of 330,000 people with federal resources, with engineers.
So the scale of the crisis just broke the old ideology.
It did. The old 19th century idea of a passive government it couldn't hold up against the sheer human and economic need.
Which had immediate political consequences, right? This wasn't just a one-off.
Absolutely not. It led directly to the Flood Control Act of 1928, which permanently centralized authority over the river system in Washington, D.C. It was a foundational shift. The government was no longer a referee. It was an active manager of national disasters.
Okay, that perfectly sets up our second tension, unity and division. You have this new mass media creating a shared national culture, but that same media is also amplifying these deep, violent splits in the country.
The unifying force was spectacle. Pure spectacle. 1927 was the absolute peak of the golden age of sport. You have the Yankees, murderers row.
Unstoppable.
And the season ends with Babe Ruth hitting his 60th home run on September 30th.
A record that stood for over 30 years. And these weren't just local wins. People all over the country were listening on those new CBS radios. They were national moments.
And culture itself, it changed forever on October 6th with the premiere of The Jazz Singer.
The first talkie?
Yep. It brought in synchronized speech and basically made silent film obsolete overnight, globally. It grossed an insane $3 million, and the whole industry just scrambled to convert to sound.
So the roar is now literally a sound in the movie theater. And Hollywood starts to formalize itself, too. The Oscars is founded in May of 27.
And on Broadway, Showboat opens in December. I mean, that's considered the first great classic of American musical theater.
Yeah.
A shared national cultural language was being manufactured right then and there.
But here's the turn. That same media that could unite millions over a baseball game could also shine a spotlight on these incredibly dark divisions.
This is where the echo gets really grim.
Let's start with a local trauma that became a national horror story. The Bath school disaster in Michigan, May 18th.
It's just horrific.
Yeah.
A disgruntled local official bombed the school. 45 people were killed, most of them children. It's still the deadliest school massacre in American history. And that local act of violence was suddenly broadcast everywhere, forcing the whole nation to confront it.
And then you have the ideological divides, which were just carved into stone with the Sacco and Vanzetti execution on August 23rd.
After years of appeals, the electrocution of these two Italian immigrant anarchists, it sparked global protests. The case just laid bare these huge fault lines in America over immigration, over radical politics, over the justice system itself.
And the media didn't bridge that gap at all.
No, it poured concrete in it.
Then you have the line blurring completely between crime and entertainment. The trial of Ruth Snyder for murdering her husband.
The press called it the dumbbell murders.
Right, the famous journalist Damon Runyon.
He basically wrote about her trial like it was a screenplay. The press cast her as this classic femme fatale, and the whole legal process became a spectacle. And what's wild is how fast that got turned into art. The real-life drama immediately inspired Sophie Treadwell's play, Machinal.
It's the moment the media realized that the story, the narrative, was more powerful than the reality. Okay, let's get to our final and maybe the most consequential duality. Prosperity and precipice.
This one starts with the engine of American industry. For almost 20 years, the Ford Model T was everything, pure utility. But on May 26th, the very last one rolls off the assembly line.
End of an era, after 15 million identical cars.
Exactly. And then December, Ford unveils the Model A. And this was a radical shift. It was priced to compete, sure, but it was all about consumer choice, colors, style. It was the death of manufacturing pure utility and the birth of manufacturing desire.
So is that the moment industry stops asking what works and starts asking what sells?
Absolutely. The Model T put America on wheels. The Model A sold America the dream of individualized prosperity. That shift to flexible mass production really created the modern consumer market we know today.
But while the factories were changing, the real precipice was being built in the financial world, far away from Detroit. In the summer of 27, the Federal Reserve kicks off its easy money policy.
And the motivation here is key. They had two goals. First, they wanted to head off what they thought might be a mild depression. Industrial production was slowing down a bit. Second, and this is critical, they wanted to help prop up European currencies, especially the British pound.
So the Fed steps in big time. They bought hundreds of millions in government securities. They slashed interest rates across all the reserve banks from 4% down to 3.5%. I mean, that sounds like a huge intervention for the time.
It was massive and coordinated. And here you see another one of those big administrative shifts. The Chicago Fed actually refused to lower its rate. They argued against the policy. The Federal Reserve Board in Washington forced them to do it on September 7th. That moment is a watershed for centralizing financial power in D.C.
Okay, so the policy worked in the short term. Industrial production picked back up by the end of the year. But you said this came at a steep cost. Where did all that cheap money actually go?
It created, and this is a quote, a dangerous impetus for stock market speculation. Because credit was so cheap and abundant, it just flooded into the stock market. We know that bank loans just to security brokers in New York City went up by about $600 million in 1927 alone.
Just a fire hose of cash aimed at Wall Street. So what did that do to stock prices?
They soared, but for all the wrong reasons. The sources point out that stocks are being recapitalized based on artificially low interest rates, not on any real intrinsic growth.
Hold on, recapitalize. Break that down for us. Does that just mean they were lending money against thin air because borrowing was so cheap?
That's a perfect way to put it. If interest rates are practically zero, investors will pay way more for any stock, driving the price up, whether or not the company is actually making more money. They were valuing the assets based on the cost of money, not the value of the business.
A great divergence.
Precisely. The real economy stabilized, but the financial economy just detached from reality, setting the stage for 29.
And this all happens at the exact same moment as a massive political earthquake.
Yes. On August 2nd, President Calvin Coolidge comes out with that famous, ridiculously short statement, I do not choose to run for president in 1928.
Which threw everything into chaos.
It created this deep uncertainty, right? That the Fed's easy money was really fueling the bubble. That political volatility just encouraged the mindset of, get your money now, get it fast, because who knows what tomorrow looks like.
So if we pull back and look at these three dualities, progress and peril, unity and division, prosperity and precipice, what are the lasting echoes of 1927 that we're still dealing with?
1927 really was a crucible. The tensions that year set three precedents that define modern debate. First, the essential role of the federal government in national crises. That comes directly from the Mississippi flood and Hoover's response.
Second, that dangerous link between a central bank's monetary policy and financial stability, that's the Fed's easy money policy.
And third, the inescapable power and responsibility of mass media in a connected world. You see with Lindbergh's celebrity, the talkies, the sensational crime coverage. The roar of the 20s is long gone, but the echoes of 1927 pretty much dictate how we handle finance, disaster, and culture today.
And this is where we have to look at the chilling shadow that came with all this rapid expansion. While the nation was celebrating new tech and centralized power, 1927 also saw a major judicial decision that reflected the era's absolute darkest impulses.
On May 2nd, the Supreme Court issued the infamous Buck v. Bell decision. And this ruling permitted the compulsory sterilization of people who were labeled as having intellectual disabilities. It was this chilling judicial action, reflecting what you could call darker social engineering impulses. It's a reminder that the technical roar of progress was shadowed by a terrifying echo in civil rights.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? With all the noise from Lindbergh and Babe Ruth and the stock market, what other dark administrative shifts might have been buried under the incredible roar of 1927. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.